Hello, everybody. Welcome to Shadow at Night. This is Monday, March the 10th, 2025. And on the show tonight, our guest is just a regular Canadian dude who filed a FOI request about 3 years ago and finally got a result. His name is Bret Sears. He is in New Brunswick, and he joins the show tonight. Already, one bombshell has been released. This came last week from the emails that he has received from PHAC, or the Public Health Agency of Canada, and he's getting thousands and thousands of these in different stages. So we're going to discuss this with Bret, how it works, how everything is being laid out, and the help he needs, because he rolled a number past me on the phone this afternoon, and I think I brought this up to you guys last week, and it's a huge number, 450,000 pages of information coming from PHAC over the next few months, and he's going to need some help looking for interesting stuff. And it's going to be interesting going through all of this because you don't really know what you're looking for, right? So, yeah, we're going to talk with Bret about that and more coming up in just a couple of minutes. Also, today was Mark Carney's first full day as the Prime Minister designate, not the Prime Minister-elect. It's President-elect down in the United States. Up here in Canada, it's Prime Minister designate. And he was caught by CTV cameras heading into the Prime Minister's office this morning at about 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And he was accompanied by a familiar face that we later found out was appointed as his chief of staff, one Marco Mendicino. And we're going to explore that a little bit later on in the show, which is brought to you by Canada Nano Silver, CanadaNanoSilver.com. Let's go say some hellos to our viewers. Oh, and by the way, X apparently was hacked in the last 24 hours. And so even though the video should be streaming onto X, it shows me right now that it is not available on X. So if you're sitting on X, I guess you probably wouldn't be able to hear me right now if you're trying to watch this on X. So maybe tell some of the people who regularly watch on X through the comments that they should be watching on Facebook or YouTube tonight. We're on YouTube or Twitch. You can watch on Telegram. You can watch on Rumble, shadowdavis.com. Hello, Linda, watching in... Oh, that went by pretty quickly. Linda watching in Medicine Hat. Hello, Roseanne watching in Southern Manitoba. Dodie Ann is watching in New Brunswick tonight. Hello, Wanda watching in Kelowna. Kyle. Well, that's a very nice message. I'm wondering if it's a bot or if it's actually real. You guys can probably see the comment yourself if you're on Facebook tonight. Debbie is watching in Fort Sask, Alberta. Larry, how you doing tonight? Stephen watching in Ottawa, the final stand, March 24th. That's when Parliament is supposed to return. Have they called an election yet? I was watching the news today and no sign of an election. I guess maybe this week it's the transition of power. And maybe instead of returning to Parliament on March 24th, Mark Carney decides, and I don't think he really has a choice in the matter without Canadians actually rebelling. I think that a rebellion in this country would look a lot like the Freedom Convoy from 2022, except a lot bigger. And by the way, Marco Mendicino lied about the Freedom Convoy as well, suggesting rape threats and whatnot. We have video of Raquel Dancho holding him to account a couple of years ago from committee. We'll play for you in just a couple of minutes. We're going to bring Bret Sears on in just a second. As a matter of fact, we're going to bring him on in 22 seconds from, hang on a minute, from right now. Hello, Bret. How you doing? Thank you for coming on the show tonight. We appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you having me on.
You know what? You've got a huge following on X, and sadly, I read today that they got hacked, and I didn't really pay any attention to it because I don't spend a lot of time on X. So I went on there today, and there was a couple of things that looked kind of wonky, and and then I went to go see tonight's show, which is not streaming, which is too bad because you've got 88,000 followers on X. It would
I
be nice
know.
for.
I was hoping to share it there, but I did have time to put out a link for Rumble, so I shared your Rumble link.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so you 3 years ago, and I want to find out all about you and why you did this as the show goes on tonight. But 3 years ago, or I guess over 3 years now, you filed a Freedom of Information request with PHAC, which is Public Health Agency of Canada. It's taken them 3 years to finally get you what you asked for. That's insane.
Yeah. Well, it's taken 3 years. They've actually been pretty good to work with, to tell you the truth. But it's taken 3 years, and they have 2 people working on this full time. So I'm seeing in the emails there are a lot of redactions. They had to go through not only the emails from Teresa Tam, but also everybody who they're sent to, everybody who they're copied on, and basically see what had to be redacted. And it's mostly for privacy reasons, is the reason they're giving. I don't know what's under it, so I'm not sure. But there are a lot of redactions in these emails.
I guess the redactions might be, well, they might be things like, so you're going to that party tonight? You're going to that crazy sex party tonight?
Yeah, exactly.
that kind of thing, right?
Who
Heaven
knows,
forbid
right?
we should ever reveal anybody's personal sexual tendencies through emails, even if they're bold enough to use public email for it, which they do, because I don't believe a lot of these bureaucrats are that smart. Last week, a bombshell came out. Donald Best, the former police detective, was one of the first to uncover it. And how did you get Donald working on these things? Did he volunteer, or did you reach out and ask him?
He basically volunteered. Listen, I put out a post on X. Well, I've been working on this for a while, so people were kind of watching for it, but it came to a lull after it was taking so long. But I just put out a post asking for anybody who wanted to help search through them to basically help me out, because I mean, there are a ton of pages. There's going to be, like you said, almost 500,000 pages released by the end of this. So I need help going through them. Donald was one of the first to step up and take on this task, and he does have a pretty good skill set as a former detective to go work through them and work with databases and get them into searchable format.
Have you had a lot of people reach out and say, yeah, I'll do that? What the hell?
Yeah, absolutely. There have been a ton of people who have reached out and offered to help. And if any of you are listening right now and I haven't gotten back to you, it's just because I had too many people reaching out who want to. So keep an eye out, and whenever I do get more, I will release more. I put out
how many, I'm sorry to interrupt you. How many responses have you had to that request? With the notable amount of followers that you have, I would imagine it would be in the hundreds.
Hundreds, yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so
insane. Like one man did this, you know, and this is something I find really interesting. And this is something you and I spoke about on the phone this afternoon. I have people reaching out to me all the time. Right. And some of them are black-pilled, which means that they're just like the far left extremists, except they're far right extremists, and you can't explain anything to them. Everything is a conspiracy theory. Everybody is bad. This guy's bad. There's no rationale or reason behind it. There's no evidence or proof behind it at all. But the other people, the people who want to do something but don't know what to do, right? Like they don't want to start a show like this because they're maybe a little bit nervous in front of a camera, or they're not well spoken, or they don't think they're well spoken. But this is something that you can do on your own time, right? And you could actually uncover some things that could be very noteworthy for Canadians to hear that has been shielded from us for whatever reason. So let me ask you, did Donald put down a template for how people can do this? Because it seems very daunting. If you're given 1,000 pages of emails, right? Okay, what am I even looking for here? What do I do?
Well, I don't know that Donald necessarily gave a template. You can go to his website, and he did really good at organizing. So I think it's donaldbest.ca, and he did a good job of organizing what he found so far, what other people's have found so far. And he put, when they gave me the documents, they weren't searchable. So he made made it so you can just type in keywords and look through the documents. OCR is what they call that. So he OCR'd the documents, and lots of other people have done the same thing in different ways. And I do have some other people who have tried with AI and have technical capabilities in that. And what they're able to do is come out with summaries of emails. So it basically summarizes, gives a shorter form of what they are. It's been a little bit useful. I haven't been able to try out everybody's different variations of that. Some because you need a paid subscription to use certain AI capabilities, which I don't have at this point. But going forward, after I start receiving more emails, it might be worth it to put a little bit of money into that. But yeah, so it has been able.
I'd say with 450,000 pages, man, like you're going to have to crack at some point and grab yourself a subscription, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. And that's another thing too, because I've done all this. I don't want to jump all over the place, but so far this has cost me $5, right? To put in an Access to Information Act request with the federal government, it just costs $5 to do. So other than that, I don't have a lot of resources to put towards it. So I am going to be trying to do some crowdsourcing, and I will put that. I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to wait till I get more emails. This one, I'm just going to do as much as I can for free. It's kind of a test run to see how this goes. But I'll have to get subscriptions for different AI tools and also for different PDF reading tools. And also, eventually, since there's so many redactions, I think that we're going to have to get some lawyers involved and try to get some of that stuff unredacted for whatever reasons that might have to come up.
This could get big. I mean,
yeah, it really could.
If you think about that first thing that came out, that very first bombshell, where Donald Best discovered, and Rebel News covered it as well. Great job by Tamara Ugolini there. Where the Inuit children are being vaccinated without their parents' consent or knowledge, for that matter, and not just vaccinated, but experimented on with a new type of vaccine. And by the way, for any algorithms who may be watching words that we say here on the show tonight on YouTube or on Meta, these are all government documents. They come from the government of Canada. So if you've got an issue with anything we're saying right now, I say you take it up with them and not us, because the information that we're revealing to you tonight is absolutely true.
Yeah.
How long did it take Donald to uncover that? Was that in the first half an hour?
This stuff with the vaccines for the Inuit babies, that they were testing out these experimental vaccines for RSV, that was pretty early on in the email. So that was one of the first things that was uncovered. Yeah, it didn't take long to get to that. So I'm expecting that there is going to be a lot more in the future too. And just to explain that a little bit, what they were doing is they had these vaccines, and give me 1 second here. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to pronounce it. Palivizumab. I think it's an AstraZeneca vaccine, and they were testing them on babies in Inuit families who are less than 3 months old, and they were not giving informed consent to the parents, or they didn't even there was no community involvement going on to let them know that they were just trying these out on babies in general. And and here, I'll read this off. Prior to our evaluation, no data was available on palivizumab effectiveness on healthy full-term babies. So that's showing you that this is an experiment. And also, they said some ethical concerns were raised by healthcare workers regarding the guarantee of free and informed consent from parents or caregivers, as well as the absence of involvement of Inuit population in the decision and implementation of the process. And it goes on to say, there's little chance that the vaccine protected against RSV hospitalizations, since the point estimate of PZB effectiveness was negative. So it failed to present not only regional to Nunavik hospitals, but also tertiary evacuations to the south RSV hospitalizations. That's from the emails, what I just read there.
That's insane. So, you know what's even more insane is that here we are talking about it. And again, we talked about this a little bit on the phone this afternoon. Independent media is talking about it because this is news. This is a huge news story.
It absolutely is.
You know, and this is something that the left has been complaining about for, I'm going to say, the last 10 years regarding residential schools. They say, well, there was a lot of medical experimentation that was happening on Aboriginal children, First Nations children in residential schools for 100 years. And they're still doing it to First Nations people and the left-wing corporate media. We don't want to talk about that. That's astounding to me. Have you?
It is, yeah.
Have you sent any of this stuff to them? Have they replied to you? Is there anything going on?
I've not received any reply. I honestly didn't go to the mainstream media. I don't know. I've worked with them before. I've gone to some different places like Rebel News, for instance. They did it. Candace Malcolm, what's her new Juno News? So she reached out too. So I'll do an interview with her at some point as well. And then there's you too, right? So I mean, this is just another platform, just like they have this, getting the news out there. So I mean, if they want to cover this, I know that there have been people told me that there is mainstream media kind of poking around at them. I have, people who have confirmed that. So why they're not covering it, I don't know. I do also have people reached out to me and told me that they do have contact with Inuit communities, and they're going to speak to them. There's some people who want to start class action, or at least one person who wants to start a class action lawsuit. I'm not sure about the technicalities around that, but this person said that they do have experience in doing that and working with northern communities.
It would be interesting if we got some of the Indigenous communities to start yelling and screaming about this stuff. Right. The media could not ignore it at that stage, nor could any government, right?
Exactly.
I mean, but the thing is, if the government decides to say, yeah, I guess this was going on according to our own documents here, what else was going on, Mr. Carney or Mr. Mendocino or whoever happens to be speaking for the government today? Bret, tell us about yourself. Tell us why you made this request in the first place 3 years ago. Is this something that you were scratching your head about ever since the beginning, or even before the pandemic was announced?
Yeah, I don't know if I was thinking about before the pandemic was really announced, but I mean, I think when I made this request, it was at a time where some of Fauci's emails were coming out from the United States, and I was thinking, okay, well, there doesn't seem to be anything coming from Canada. We basically have the equivalent of Fauci here in Theresa Tam, and nobody has her emails. What's going on there? How come nobody's getting this? How come some alternative media isn't searching into this? I didn't know if they were or not, but I thought, what, anybody can put in access to information act request under that act. So I figured I may as well do it, and then let's see where it goes. And I had no idea where it was going to lead. I just put it out there on X that I was going to do it. I got a lot of help from people who were very interested and gave me some tips on how to submit a request. And originally, what I had done was submit a request with a list of keywords, a pretty exhaustive list of keywords that were related to the pandemic. And I sent that request in, waited the 30 days, and they're supposed to call you back or get back to you within that 30-day period, and they didn't. So then I put in a complaint with I forget the name of the agency, but I put in a complaint, and a gentleman from this did get back to me, and we reviewed it, and we ended up agreeing that instead of just putting in a list of keywords and getting a set of emails with all those keywords in it, we get all of Tam's emails from December of 2019 up to June of 2021. Which is when I put in this request. So that was the current date at that point.
June of 2021. Why did you pick that as the end date? Was that
that's when I put in the request. So there were no
Oh,
Yeah.
right. It's 3 years.
I
It's
couldn't ask for
3 years.
future emails. Yeah, I know.
That's hilarious. So why did you put that in? Well, it's because that's what I sent them in. Have you
Yeah.
thought about maybe going and trying to get more now, or is it
Yeah.
enough for now?
Well, I mean, it's enough for now. They have two people working on this full time. So I know that they do. I've been in contact with multiple people regarding this. So putting in a request right now for more emails, just there's no point to do that at this point. But if we were coming up towards the last batches of that, and there's still lots of stuff being uncovered, absolutely, I'll do that.
So how are they coming out? You say there's going to be 450,000 pieces of
Yeah, close to
documentation.
500,000.
Crazy. They're coming to you in monthly drops. Am I right?
Yes. So they're working on them as 1 month batches. So, like I said, the first ones I got just recently were from December of 2019. So the next ones will be from January of 2020, and then February. Well, actually, they said they're probably not going to come out in exact order because there's different amount of emails and different people they have to contact. But yes, they're going to come out in batches of 1 month. And then my plan
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. Oh, and my plan is I'm just releasing all of these, right? Just so I'm making them publicly available. Anybody who wants to go and do their own research in these documents, I absolutely encourage that. I'm not trying to make this exclusive to anyone. I'm not trying to profit off this at all. I just want the truth to be exposed.
I wonder because, as you say, these two full-time people working on this, typical government move, right? But if two full-time people are working on this and they're calling some of the people who were involved in some of these emails, I wonder if any of these people have the ability to say, no, you can't show that. That's private, even if it's not, right?
Yeah. So how we will ever get to the bottom of that, I don't know. I'm sure there's some of that going on. People want their stuff to be withheld for privacy reasons. When they give redactions, like some of these pages, they're not even blacked out. It would look ridiculous if they're blacked out. They're just completely white, and then it gives a little explanation at the top. Blocked or redacted for whatever section of the clause is for privacy reasons, right? That's what most of them are redacted for. So I think that in order to see if there's anything that we have to get unredacted, we're going to have to read clues in other emails as to what the pages might be included in the pages that are blacked out.
Did you think when you first started doing this, like, was this a serious thing? Because you paid $5, like you said, right? Like $5.
Oh, absolutely. I was serious. Yeah. I wanted to get these emails. Yeah.
Were you upset? Were you mad? Like, what compelled you? What's your motivation? There's a lot of people who are upset. They don't know what to do. They don't do anything. They just bitch and moan, right? But you actually went out and did something. Like, did people call you crazy? Give us your story a bit, Matt. Tell us about you.
I don't know why I thought I could get them, or I just knew it was going to be a huge task, huge undertaking, and it has been. I don't know what to say. I want to do this. I knew it was completely within my rights to ask for that, so I did. So the motivation behind it is just to get to the bottom of what went on, and when they came up with all these lockdowns, all the mandates, the coercions for the vaccine, how that was handled, how they decided that they were quote unquote safe and effective, all that stuff. So I wanted to know what was going on. This is how we can do it. I saw emails coming out in the States from Fauci's emails, and yeah, and
they got Fauci dead to rights. I mean, like, when they put him in front of the committee there, man. I mean, like, they got him dead to rights over and over and over again. I'm surprised, and then of course that wide sweeping pardon that Biden issued on his last day actually opens Fauci up for state prosecution, I think, which is very funny. But go ahead.
No, I don't know. There are some ups and also some downsides for giving him that pardon. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure about the details, but that could backfire on Fauci.
What do you think the problem in Canada is as compared to the United States? I mean, they have been open and they have been attacking the people behind all of this nonsense. They have been saying out loud in front of television cameras, and yet here, any politician who tries to talk about this, if they do at all, is shouted down, shamed. Like, what's the difference between here and there?
Yeah, it's sad. Our media, for one, a lot of the media in the United States is kind of controlled, but they do have more media that's willing to be oppositional, which we don't seem to have here in Canada. They just want to be the mouthpiece for the government. And also, I get a lot of heat for this, but I don't think that our opposition is effective at all. I think they go along with the Liberals more often than they go against them. They do some theater, but when it came to the vaccines, the lockdowns, the mandates, they're basically in lockstep for 2 years. I think that once the Freedom Convoy went to Ottawa, that was the first time that that Pierre Poilievre really said, okay, well, he went out and he met with them. So he showed a little bit of weak support for it, but it took up to that point for them to, make any opposition to what Trudeau and the Liberals were doing. Even the spending, you remember that when Trudeau wanted to go on a 6-month spending orgy, and they passed that with unanimous consent. What did Trudeau do? Well, he went and spent the money on abortions in Africa. Ridiculous things, right? And then they knew he was going to do that, but they went along with it anyway. They just unanimously voted for him to go on this unlimited spending spree. When the vaccines were being rolled out, the opposition was, they're not getting rolled out fast enough. That was the opposition. So
Pierre Poilievre is actually on video talking about that. I mean, it's infuriating to see that today, isn't it?
So that's what I'm saying. The media and the opposition, when it comes to coronavirus, they were all in this together, right? So,
well, do you remember I'm not sure if it was a commercial or a public service announcement where they had all 5 of the leaders. So you got the Bloc guy, you got Trudeau, you got Erin O'Toole at the time, you had Jagmeet Singh, and whoever the leader of the Greens was, I can't remember her name. And they were all talking about, getting injected and the 6-foot rule, which has been proven to be BS, right? Like, didn't Fauci actually say? Well, yeah, all of it was. But didn't Fauci actually admit, like the BS? He said, 6 foot. I don't know where that came from. Like, what? You don't know where it came from? Then what? Are you kidding me? Because if you didn't stand 6 feet apart in 2021, police would come and arrest you. They would wrestle you to the ground and they would arrest you. By the way, their mask would always slip off during the tussle, and nobody ever said anything about that, which I found to be completely ridiculous. Or watching an NHL, you know what, now that I think of it, watching an NHL hockey game, remember we played in the bubbles where there was no crowds?
And they would put fake crowd noises into it?
Yeah, and the coaches were wearing 2 masks, and the trainers were wearing 2 masks, and the referees were wearing 2 masks, and the players, nope, no masks for the players. Like, how does that make any sense at all? Like, how come nobody is asking this question?
Right? Well, I mean, there was one time where the Canadian female hockey team went out into the ice and they were all played a game in masks. How ridiculous was that? Yeah, I remember that.
I don't remember.
They were playing against the Russians, I believe.
Were the Russians wearing masks?
No, just one team.
I didn't know that. I'm going to see if I can find video on that.
Yeah, go find that. I think there's pictures on that of it somewhere. Yeah.
So you've known this since the beginning, or at least you've been questioning this since the beginning?
Yeah, right from the very beginning, I was questioning it. Like, it just didn't seem. You know what? When there was those propaganda videos coming out from China, people dropping dead in the streets, and people in hospitals, in the hallways, and all that, and people's doors being welded shut. That raised red flags to me right off the start. So that's when I started questioning it. It's just like, what's going on here? So.
And that was early on
Yeah,
in
yeah,
2020
absolutely.
too, right? Like I was
Yeah.
the same too. I remember talking to, this is like a trip down memory lane. It's like 5 years ago. It certainly doesn't feel like 5 years, but it is. I remember talking to friends at that time, and they were all panicked over some crazy virus coming from China, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, man, like whatever. It's don't worry, they're not gonna. It's just like all of the other things. You heard of MERS and all of that other stuff. It never amounted to anything. That and the bird flu or the whatever it was, that H5N1 that was
Mhm.
2009 ish, 2010, and that never really amounted to anything except for a bad flu. So that's what I was saying to people, and guess what they did, and they thought that they'd proved me wrong, and I just went, no, there's something else going on here, right? But at that point, at the very beginning, do you remember? You couldn't say anything about anything without people calling you a grandma killer.
Yeah. Yeah, it was ridiculous. They had a massive propaganda machine behind this to silence anybody who, spoke out against or contrary to the narrative they were trying to push. And it was everywhere. It was in the media. It was social media, the platforms. I mean, we seen the Twitter files when they came out, and what happened with the American government trying to silence people, and it worked. It worked on Twitter. It worked on Facebook. Like you said, I have a relatively large account on X there, formerly Twitter, and I was banned. I was kicked off of the platform. It wasn't until Elon bought it and did like a blanket unbanning of people that I got my account back there.
Let me ask you, how deep down the rabbit hole have you gone, Brett? Like, are you way deep in there? Because I'll tell you, the audience, the median on this audience that watches every night, these folks know that this is all a bunch of BS. Everything they're talking about
Right.
depopulation. And by the way, you guys tonight watching, I've got a thing on the extension shadowdavis.com. Matt Walsh goes pretty deep on the depopulation agenda in a recent piece he did, which I've picked off, and we're going to run that tonight. And then there's something on children. The NCI just wrapped up in Edmonton this past weekend. Theo Fleury testified, "Are children safe in this country? There is a epidemic of child sex exploitation, slavery,
Mhm.
all of that stuff." How far down the rabbit hole do you go?
Oh geez, you're talking about just like general conspiracy theories. I'd say somewhere between the moon landing was faked, but I don't go as far as the Earth is flat.
There's a meter.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Goes right just a little bit past moon landing, but stops at flat Earth.
Yeah.
That's funny. So, what do you think this was all about? Was it just an exercise in control to see exactly how far they could go?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was an exercise in control to see how far they could go. They also wanted to push these experimental vaccines to see how much money they can make off of that. Like to see how far they could go. I think that's what the masks were. Remember when they put the masks? They didn't work. They knew they didn't work right from the beginning. Now they admit that they didn't work. What it was just a visual representation of how many people will comply and how they could get people to comply. That's all it was, right? So.
But the violence, I mean,
But
like we
yeah, I
talked
know.
about, a few minutes ago, like that Canadian Tire video that I think every Canadian should have seen by now, where
Yeah.
there's a guy standing in Canadian Tire, gets attacked by 5 or 6 employees before the police arrive. Their masks are all over their faces. They don't care about that in the moment. All they care about is getting this non-complier, this anti-masker down on the ground with his hands behind his back,
Yeah.
right? In a submissive position. Like that's mass formation psychosis.
Absolutely. Mass formation psychosis is the right word. That was something that a lot of us learned during the so-called pandemic.
Yeah. Dr. Matthias
And
Desmet.
exactly. And it's like other instances of like children playing hockey outside on a rink and being tackled by police. What is
Threatened
that?
to be tasered. Those two female cops. You're thinking about the same video where the two female cops, they got a taser pulled on this 16-year-old kid who's just skating around on outdoor ice. Did you ever get a ticket through the pandemic response?
I did not. I didn't get a ticket for anything. There were times where I've gone to protests and the police showed up, and they were actually pretty good at them. They let us do it. I didn't wear a mask at any point, like in grocery stores. I think there was only one time where it was confrontational, that an employee actually started yelling at me. I always try to stay calm and stuff like that. But for the most part, you walk in, it was fine. I didn't get a ticket for anything, no.
What was that confrontation like with that employee?
He was just yelling at me, and he was being irate, and it was actually at a liquor store. So it was, in New Brunswick here, they're government controlled. So, they had a bit of an issue with that, and I told him, I just said, well, I have an exemption, and I'm going to go buy this, and I'll be out of here. And he just yelled at me the whole time. I walked up to the counter, and I paid for it. So the person behind the counter, behind the plexiglass, which also was ridiculous, but
because the virus is going to stop at the plexiglass, right? And that's not going to go over the top of it. Or, hey, like, you're going to hand me that bottle back after just handing it, like touching it and handling it yourself and breathing all over it. Like, many.
But that's another thing, is because, like, I didn't wear masks, and it really wasn't that hard at the beginning. It was like you felt a lot of pressure to do it, but after you didn't, even if you were the only one, it was okay, for the most part. And I think that if a lot of people had just said, no, I'm not going to do it, this wouldn't have gone anywhere close to as far as it did.
You're a married guy, right?
Yes. Recently married. Yes.
Okay. So how long have you been with her?
Okay.
And if it's too personal, you don't have to
No,
answer,
it's not too personal, but I actually, I lost my wife, my late wife, during the pandemic in December of 2021. December of 2020. Yeah. So I had to go through the whole, death and all of that. Trying to, and they're all trying to impose all these rules at her wake and her funeral. And I'm in New Brunswick now. Our hometown, where Stephanie and I were both from, is in Nova Scotia, and they had the border closed, literally with police checkpoints at every crossing. For New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, this thing called the maritime bubble, or whatever it was. So I did bury her in our hometown, and they gave me a compassionate exemption that I was allowed to cross the border to do that. And when I came back to New Brunswick, they told me I had, and I'm not going to get into the details of all what regulations and that, we couldn't have we could only have a certain amount of people at the church, and all of this, and people felt like they didn't want to come because they didn't want to take somebody else's spot. So a lot of people just couldn't go to it. But when I came back and crossed the border back into New Brunswick, they told me I had to go into self-isolation for 14 days. After just losing my wife, they wanted me to lock myself in a room for 14 days. Of course I didn't do it, but at that point they were calling me every single day to make sure I wasn't going anywhere. It was ridiculous.
Wow, man. I didn't know any of this. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Wow. That kind of sidetracks what I was asking, but your current wife, I mean, like, through all of this, what has your experience been? I mean, like, with friends and family, did you have setbacks with certain family members or friends? Were you ostracized from groups?
Yes. I mean, I don't want to come on here and start talking bad about people. I know that.
No. It's just like I'm talking about you personally.
My son's grandparents, my mother-in-law and that side of the family. after she had passed, they didn't want to see us because once the vaccines were released after that, or the mRNA injections, I don't even like calling them vaccines, but they were released after that, and then they really didn't want to see us because me and my son decided not to take them. So there was that. Other than that, I think most of my relationships with other people were pretty good. Even people I disagreed with. I think that you can actually disagree with people and still get along, even on some subjects like this, if it doesn't get too heated. Thankfully, my wife now, who I just married a couple weekends ago, when we've been together for over a year, she is very much on the same page as me in all of these things. So we actually met at a mutual friend's place, and we were kind of a group of people online who kind of had similar thought process, like-minded people, and we met at a party and got to know each other, and eventually we got married.
That's a good story.
It is. So I'm
sorry. No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, that's one good thing that definitely came out of all of this is I got to meet my future wife.
You've been through a lot, man, in the last 4 or 5 years. That's crazy.
Pretty crazy, yeah.
I don't even know what to like. So was this party where you met your current wife, was this like a conspiracy theory party, or was it just a bunch of like-minded people who get together, right? Like, how do you actually find out you're on the same page like this?
We were kind of in chat rooms together, kind of, although I'd never met her before. I hadn't talked to her. It just, one of my friends was like, okay, well, I live in Ontario, you live in New Brunswick, we're going to get everybody together from across Canada, wherever they want to come stay at my place, and we'll have a big party here. And so I don't know if you want to call them conspiracy theorists. Some of them definitely were, and some maybe a little less so. Truth seekers. There you go. So and she just happened to, even though we didn't meet online, that's kind of where everything got set up. So we actually met in person, which is a little bit different than people, a lot of people now, everybody, if you have long distance relationships or something, it's kind of like online, but we actually met in person, made it work long distance for a little while. And then, and here she is with me now.
She moved out to New Brunswick to be
New Brunswick, yes. Yep.
Wow, that's cool. So let's get back to the original topic of the show, which is the emails that you're now getting. How can people, Bret, get a hold of you? Is it strictly through X, or is there another way?
But the best way to get a hold of me is through X, yes. So, I mean, you can, my messages are open to anyone. So even if I'm not following you, I try to follow a lot of people back, as many as I can. But even if we're not following each other, you can still send me a message there. You can go through, my profile if you want to be able to find the emails. And for the next batches, I'm going to try to set up a website, and I mean, that's something else that's going to cost money that I'm going to try to do fundraising for sometime in the future. But as of right now, if you send me a message on X, I'm pretty good to get them.
Excellent. Well, you got back to me in a couple of days. That was pretty cool.
I feel bad about that. I'm usually even better than that.
No, man. I mean, I can understand you got
that was at a point where I was getting flooded with them. So right now,
and you just got married. I mean, the guy just got married. He decides he's going to put all these PHAC emails out on X. He's asking for people to message him. Then I come along and say, "Hey, you want to come on the show?" And you take 2 days to get back to me. Give me a break. That's pretty good.
I got married 2 days after I got these emails, so that was an eventful weekend.
Yeah, I'm sure the honeymoon was great. Yeah, honey, I'll be right with you. I'm just checking my messages. I'm sure she loved that. Bret, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight. We really appreciate what you have done. We appreciate you taking the time to come on the show tonight. And if there's ever any updates you want to share, you are absolutely welcome back at any time.
I appreciate that.
And did you mention to me earlier that you're starting your own show in the future as well, or is that just something you're thinking about?
No, I'm not thinking of starting my own show. Not in anywhere in the near future, but doing more stuff like this. Like I haven't really. Sometimes I host spaces on X, so I like doing that. But that's mostly just audio, right? So I'm getting used to coming on podcasts like yours and
Right.
doing that. So trying to
Well,
get things set up. I realize I got to get a better background behind me and get the lighting worked out. But yeah, this is the beginning. We'll see where it leads.
Okay, well, you know what? I've got connections with some other independent media, and your story and what you've done needs to get out and be shared with as many of them as possible. So, would it be okay if I reach out to them and say, "Hey, you got to get Bret Sears on your show"?
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, man. Thank you very much for coming on tonight, and we'll talk to you again.
Appreciate it, Shadow. Thank you.
Okay, there is Bret Sears, guys. We'll be right back with the Mark Carney story, Pierre Poilievre video, who is Carney's new chief of staff, and more in 22 seconds. Welcome back. The Shadow at Night live stream, as always, is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com. Kevin and Anna from Canada Nano Silver were once again out at another trade show this past weekend. It was the Winnipeg Women's Show at the Winnipeg Convention Center on Saturday and Sunday, where they gave away a $690 prize package to one of the people who made a purchase at their booth there this past weekend. And we have video of the winner. So here you go.
Here we are, Canada Nano Silver at the Women's Show, Winnipeg. We got our basket here. We're going to do the draw now. $690 value of all these products. We'll get Anna to pull the bin down. Nope, just take it down. Take the lid off, stir it up. Then we'll get... There's Patrick.
Yes.
Come on over here.
How are you doing?
How are you? You're going to be the man. You're going to be the man that picks the winner.
Picks the winner? Yep. Wow. Is my name in there? There we go.
No, you didn't buy nothing.
My name is not in here, but we have a winner. The winner is Miranda St. Dennis.
Miranda St. Dennis.
Yes.
So,
which is absolutely incredible.
$690 value basket.
Wow, Miranda St. Dennis.
Perfect.
That is so amazing.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
You're very welcome.
And there's our Canada Nano Silver basket.
There you go. Excellent.
Congratulations.
Miranda St. Dennis bought something from Canada Nano Silver this past weekend at the Winnipeg Women's Show, and she won $690 worth of excellent product. Every single one of the items that you hear me talk about, the facial serum, the skin cream, toothpaste, the immune gummies, all of that stuff included in that package, again, worth $690. Shadow at Night live stream, proudly presented by CanadaNanoSilver.com. So today was Mark Carney's first day on the job as Prime Minister designate. Not Prime Minister, not yet. That job still belongs to Justin Trudeau, who was spotted by somebody today taking his chair out of the House of Commons. This is an actual photo of Justin Trudeau, I guess, taking his chair home with him as a memento of his time as Prime Minister. That's the chair he was sitting in for 10 years at the House of Commons, and look at the tongue hanging out. The only thing missing, my friends, is the black shoe polish, because that is the same facial expression as the blackface photos that we saw emerge, 5, 6, 7 years ago now? There he is. It's good to see that Justin Trudeau has matured so much in these past almost 10 years as the Prime Minister of Canada. So there he is, taking his chair out today. And Mark Carney, in his first full day on the job, in his first decision, and he's not the Prime Minister yet. He's the Prime Minister designate. So this is the week of transference, powers being transferred from one person to the other. Mark Carney's first decision as Prime Minister designate was to appoint a chief of staff. And he appointed Marco Mendicino as his chief of staff. Marco Mendicino, of course, the former Minister of Public Safety, the man who lied all through the Freedom Convoy, the man who lied about Paul Bernardo's transfer, among other things. As a matter of fact, Andrew Scheer pointed it out quite well on his X today. He said, understanding that Andrew Scheer is the House leader for the Conservative Party, and of course he's going to say these things, but these things are all true. I have verified. Marco Mendicino's rap sheet of lies is as long as Carney's. Mendicino lied about sadistic serial killer Paul Bernardo being transferred out of maximum security prison. To this day, he still has not been moved back. Mendicino lied about Beijing operating police stations in Canadian soil. They were. Mendicino lied about policing, asking for the Emergencies Act to be implemented. The RCMP commissioner directly contradicted this claim. Marco Mendicino lied to Canadians. He lied so much that even Trudeau fired him. And Mark Carney said, that's my guy. But when you have a record of lying like Mark Carney does, you need a chief of staff to go along with it. And I guess the Conservatives' new slogan, and this is a good one, can't trust Carney. Can't trust Carney. I like that. Hey, here's video of Winnipeg Conservative MP Raquel Dancho giving it to Marco Mendicino. Where is this video here? Let's see if I can pull this up. Yeah, giving it to Marco Mendicino a few years ago at committee. When she was walking through the trucker convoy, Raquel says she never had any problems.
We can go on, but yet there was like, I just don't understand how you could be saying on one hand, there's all these strong ties and this is a national emergency for public safety. And I walked every day by these protests. It just doesn't really add up at all.
Minister,
Dancho,
sorry, just 10 seconds, Minister.
Well, I would say first, it's not an insinuation. We got the advice from our law enforcement that we'd met the threshold. And secondly,
I just
Ms.
can't believe you
Dancho,
put us in danger in that way,
respectfully,
to
Ms.
be honest.
Dancho,
Like,
there
that
were Ottawans.
seems...
Okay, so there he's saying that the police said, yeah, we met the threshold. No, you did not. You're lying, and the police never said that. And they testified to that very thing about a year and a half after Mendicino is testifying here at committee.
Well, I would say first, it's not an insinuation. We got the advice from our law enforcement that we'd met the threshold. And secondly,
I
Ms.
just can't believe you
Dancho,
put us in danger in that way,
respectfully,
to be
Ms.
honest.
Dancho,
Like,
there
that
were Ottawans who were
seems
subjected
very
to
irresponsible to
intimidation,
me.
harassment, threats of rape. I mean, and those were all supported by
So how could we...
charges.
Threats of rape? I'm sorry, what? I've never heard of anything like that before. And you see, this is what government officials, elected or non-elected, will say. And because they've got the power of government and the left-wing corporate media backing them, they just walk away from it like it's absolutely true. As a matter of fact, I would even suggest that Marco Mendicino believes his lies. And like George Costanza from Seinfeld said, remember, it's not a lie if you believe it.
possibly been allowed to walk by that every day.
Sorry, the time has elapsed.
Of course, the time has elapsed. The time always elapses. That's what liberals do. They talk, a walk around. Filibustering is what it's called, knowing there's only 3 minutes for responses, and they just bumble and stumble. They don't answer the question, and then, sorry, the time is up. So CTV got Mark Carney walking into the Prime Minister's office this morning with Marco Mendicino and asked him a question or two. And following that video, you'll see is Nick Nanos of Nanos Polling coming on and suggesting that the Liberals may have a pretty good chance at forming government in this next election.
I received from the Liberal Party a lot of wood to chop. Very much looking forward to meeting with the Prime Minister and getting going.
And what about with the premiers today? What's going to be your message?
As I said yesterday, the premiers and the provinces have really stepped up, not just for their provinces, but for our country. I'm very grateful for that, as I think all Canadians are, and it's important to keep the good cooperation between the federal government and the provinces, standing up for Canada.
And what's your first order of business?
First order of business is to see the Prime Minister. Thank you.
All right, Mark Carney there arriving at the Prime Minister's office saying he is ready to get down to work. Of course, that's after he was elected Liberal leader last night in a resounding victory, 86% on the first ballot. And to talk a little bit more about this, we're going to bring in Nick Nanos. He's the founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research. Good to see you, Nick. Now, Mark Carney coming in there, you know, we just saw that, and it comes at a time when, you know, the Conservatives have been, or the Liberals rather, have been able to sort of catch up with the Conservatives when it comes to polling numbers. What do your numbers say about Mark Carney's chances federally?
Well, you know, the thing is when we look at the trend over the last number of weeks, Renee, what's clear is that the Liberals have become much more competitive. Like, let's face it, they were on their deathbed 6 weeks ago, you know, trailing by over 20 percentage points. And now they're within the margin of error. It's like 37, 34 between the Liberals and the Conservatives. So, you know, the thing is for Mark Carney, the Liberals are back in the game. The big question is will there be a bump coming out of the Liberal convention, the leadership process? I think the fact that he had that crushing victory, like 86%, good by any standard, suggests that at least the Liberals are united behind Mark Carney as their choice to face off against Pierre Poilievre. But that said, Renee, because things have been so volatile and changing so quickly in the last number of weeks, I expect things to continue to be volatile as Canadians look at, you know, the choices, Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre, both of those individuals, as how they would face off against Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, huh? Like, that's all this is about? Donald Trump? See, this is the problem with pollsters, right? They get fixated on one issue, whatever that issue of the day happens to be, forgetting completely about everything else that any government or politician has done to screw over the country that they're in. It's the same in every country, these pollsters. And that's what the people will fixate on because they're told to fixate on it. You guys are right to suggest that it's a distraction, right? The media is leading you this way. They want you to follow. Come with us. Come with us. They're blowing their horn. Beep, 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 beep. Pied Piper style. But we need to keep our eyes on everything, right? And that's the difference, I suppose, between people like us and the normies out there who just cannot seem to see past the daily narrative. And that's why they're putting up Ukraine flags one day on their Facebook avatar, that it's a Canadian flag, the next, then it's a trans flag, the next, then back to Ukraine, then back to Canada, then back to trans, and whatever else happens to come along that week. Pierre Poilievre held a press conference. Whoops, wrong. Pierre Poilievre held a press conference this morning, and here's what he had to say.
Mark Carney is trying to hide from his record over the last 5 years of advising Trudeau in favor of raising carbon taxes, money printing inflation, and blocking resource projects, all while he moved his company headquarters and jobs to the United States. You know, it's ironic. Mr. Carney is trying to distract from his many scandals and conflicts of interest, as well as his disastrous record as Justin Trudeau's economic advisor, by talking about Trump. He's the guy that sold out to Trump. 6 days after Donald Trump threatened Canada with tariffs to steal our jobs, Mark Carney announced to Brookfield shareholders that he would move his headquarters from Canada to New York. And when you asked him about it, he lied to your face. We got it in writing, and we proved it. He sold out Canada. He put his profit ahead of our people. And he did exactly what Donald Trump wanted. Never before have we had a prime minister so conflicted and compromised, and yet so little scrutinized. Just like when he supported carbon taxes in Canada while investing in American coal. He opposed Canadian pipelines while his company bought Middle East pipelines. He has millions of dollars of financial interests that run against Canada's national interests. He gets rich making Canadians poor. You can be sure about one thing. Donald Trump's going to have a briefing on his desk of all of Mark Carney's American investments. And he is going to leverage all of Carney's profit motive against the interest of the Canadian people. And we know Carney will sell out Canada for his personal profit. He's already done it. He's systematically done it his entire time as a corporate insider.
Mr. Poilievre, what economic and diplomatic experience do you have to go up against Donald Trump?
Oh, quite a lot, actually. So I was the Minister of Jobs and Housing in the Harper government, during which time housing cost half as much as it does today. I helped Mr. Harper cut the GST, cut income tax, cut business tax, and balance the budget. Over my time in Parliament, I've been scrutinizing and studying the books on the Public Accounts Committee, the Operations Committee, the Finance Committee. And if you want any proof that my economic ideas are the best, the Liberals are all trying to pretend that they're copying them right before the election. All the big economic questions of the last 5 years, Mark Carney has been wrong and exactly wrong, and I have been right. I said 5 years ago the money printing would cause inflation. He said deflation was on the horizon. I turned out to be right. I said the carbon tax would drive up food prices, and it did. Drove them up 37% faster in Canada than in the United States of America. I was the first parliamentarian to predict that we would have the inflation crisis, while Carney, Freeland, Trudeau, and others were saying that we would not. I was the first one to be, along with my Conservative colleagues, fighting for pipelines. Pipelines now everyone claims that they support after opposing them for the last 10 years. So if Mr. Carney is so smart on economics, how is it that he was so wrong for so long on all of the economic issues? One thing I don't have experience with is taking jobs out of Canada, moving them to the United States, selling out our resource workers to support Middle Eastern resource workers. That's not the kind of experience that I have, but that's not the kind of experience that we want.
Yeah, so very good press conference there by Pierre Poilievre, saying the obvious, calling Mark Carney a liar. This is how the Conservatives will attack. I haven't seen any attack ads yet from the Conservative Party regarding Mark Carney. I thought I was going to be seeing them from the very moment that I woke up this morning, but I guess they're holding off on that, at least for now, which is kind of funny because they've out-fundraised every other political party in this country at least 2-1. They've got money to burn right now. And during an election campaign, you can only spend so much money. But before an election campaign, you can spend as much as you want. So why aren't they out spending right now and defining Mark Carney for the Canadian people before the Liberals have the opportunity to do that? They've been calling him Carbon Tax Carney for the better part of, a year, maybe a year and a half, maybe a little longer, maybe a little less. But they've got to get some ads out there immediately vilifying this guy. You know what I would suggest? I would say bring back who was the guy who ran for the Liberals in 2011? Just visiting. Michael Ignatieff, just visiting. That's what I would do to Carney. Couple that with the lying that he's been telling. Use some of the memes that have been flying around social media, like Mark Carney, who won the very first Indianapolis 500. Mark Carney, who taught Lennon and McCartney how to write music. Mark Carney, who taught Jimi Hendrix how to play guitar. Mark Carney, who walked on the moon and helped Neil Armstrong down the ladder. These are the kinds of things that you're seeing on social media, memes that have been formed with AI, obviously. They're funny as hell, and they're high quality, too. Use those in a attack campaign against him. And then I guess the only other opportunity the Conservatives are going to have to confront Mark Carney, because the media is not going to do it, you know that, the media loves him, is during the debates. I don't know how many there's going to be. Will there be more than 2? Usually there's a French language and an English language. How long is this campaign going to be? Is there going to be an immediate election? We don't know any of these things, at least not yet. Time will tell. We're back live on X right now for as long as we have left in the social media part of the show. There were some problems getting on earlier. Again, I had mentioned that X had been hacked over the past 24 hours, but it looks like they're up and running again. The National Citizens Inquiry was in Edmonton Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and the theme was, "Are our children safe in Canada?" And friend of the show, Theo Fleury, testified last week. Watch.
And then the pandemic happened. And I was as busy as I had ever been at any point in my life, and the world just completely shut down. And I fell into a deep, dark, ugly depression. And like I was having suicidal ideations, and I could barely get out of bed. I stopped showering, I stopped eating, I stopped sleeping, and I was just like, what the hell is going on here? So I booked an appointment with my therapist, and obviously we had to do it on Zoom because I couldn't go and see her. And so she said, "Explain to me what's happening. Why are you in this state?" And I was just like, well, so I started to explain to her what was going on in my world, and she said, "Okay, we'll stop right there." And she goes, "What did your pedophile abuser do to you?" Well, I said he used manipulation, coercion, lying, cheating. She goes, "Who's that remind you of?" I said, "The government." So my pedophile abuser, the same tactics that my pedophile abuser used, same tactics the government used to get us to lock down, to take the jabs, to do all that. And so I, because I wasn't doing anything, people started to invite me to come on their podcast. And so I, being the vulnerable guy I am, and I'm willing to talk about anything. I'm not afraid to talk about my experience with trauma. So I started to explain this, depressive state that I had just come out of. And I don't know, I was probably on 4 or 5 different podcasts where I explained, this depression that I was experiencing. And sure enough, my phone absolutely blew up. And people were saying, "Well, thank you for explaining what's going on with me right now too," And it was amazing. As soon as, the pandemic happened, we saw a spike in mental illness. We saw a spike in opioid use. You know what I mean? And so basically, I was experiencing trauma. And, when you think about it, who is the biggest perpetrator of trauma on the planet? It's government. It's government, right? If you can't afford to eat, put food on your table, that's trauma. If you can't afford to put gas in your car, that's trauma, right? And so there came a point where I had to decide whether I was going to go all in on this or I was going to be all out. And I decided, and I made a promise to myself a long time ago that if I saw abuse, I was going to call it out. And so basically what you've seen from the last 5 years of me on social media is I'm calling out abuse. And it's systemic government abuse. And nobody talks about the psychology of the pandemic. Because these people, these politicians are master manipulators, master abusers. And we've all experienced the trauma of systemic government abuse. And we, I've been doing this for 16 years. The last 5 years, I've never dealt with more suicidal people in the whole entire time I've been doing this work, right? And, because what happens is we get traumatized, okay? And that trauma leaves us in emotional pain and suffering, and it's silent. You can't see it, right? You can't see it because we're all really good at wearing lipstick, right? When we leave our houses, we look together, everything's great, you know, how you doing? I'm fine, you know, all this stuff. But when we experience emotional pain, what is emotional pain? It's mental illness, right? So then how are we going to deal with this pain and suffering that is left behind from trauma? Well, we're going to gravitate towards the dark side of life, and we're going to get involved in addictive behavior as a coping mechanism to suppress the emotional pain that we're experiencing.
You guys all know Theo's story, right? Graham James. Still goes through some dark patches, but he doesn't get enough credit for everything that he has done for people who have gone through that nightmare as children being abused by adults, people in power positions. His situation happened in Moose Jaw, happened in the 1980s. His coach was Graham James. And he said, "You've got the talent to make the NHL, kid. You just got to listen to me." And that's where the grooming started. Theo explains the situation so well. I'm going to have to get him back on the show at some point soon to talk about the grooming, because it goes hand in hand with what is going on today in schools. And Theo will be the first one to tell you that. Schools where they're grooming young children. As a matter of fact, here, let me pull this up here real quick. Look at this. This was a leaked, where is it here? Here it is. This was a leaked email. Ooh, it's going to be tough to read. A leaked email that came out from the Winnipeg School Division today. Let me see if I can read this to you, because you guys aren't going to be able to see that. I can barely see that. So let me pull it up here. This leaked email says, from the Winnipeg School Board, from Matt Henderson, superintendent, he says, based on direction from the Board of Trustees and on the language used in Donald Trump's speech to Congress last night, future professional development travel to the United States will now not be permitted. Trips that have been previously planned are permitted, but I encourage our staff to find an alternative. Canadian experiences. Additionally, all student travel to the United States is canceled and future plans will not be permitted until further notice. The safety of our learners and staff is paramount, and the president's divisive, hateful, and anti-democratic actions and rhetoric present a danger to our community. Okay, so what's your definition of anti-democratic? What has he done that is anti-democratic? Can anybody answer that? But yet that's the rhetoric that's coming from the hard left. And this guy is in charge of thousands of young people in the city of Winnipeg. He says, I thank you for your understanding. Should you have any questions or concerns, please contact your principal or direct supervisor. Again, Matt Henderson, superintendent of the Winnipeg School Division. And from what I've found out, ever since putting that email up on Facebook and on X today, it's happening all over the city. It's happening in different places across the country. So if you have kids or grandkids going to school, you might want to look into whether or not their travel to the United States has been canceled. They may have had plans to go down to Florida or maybe for a hockey game or whatever. And now, no. So see if you can find out. That is absolutely ridiculous. Anti-democratic. What has Donald Trump done that's been anti-democratic? I don't know that he's done anything that's been anti-democratic. Everything he's doing, he promised he was going to do during the election campaign. Staying with the child abuse issue, this story comes from CBC. It was also published on the AP and the CP. More than 100 arrested in Canada-wide child exploitation operation, police say. This came out last week. RCMP say sweep known as Project Steel identified dozens of victims. And guys, this is just a drop in the bucket. Police say they have made more than 100 arrests and laid more than 300 charges in a major national child exploitation operation with some help from device-sniffing dogs. Representatives of the RCMP and other police forces provided an update last week on Wednesday on a project aimed at protecting children from sexual abuse. RCMP Inspector Matthew Gerard told a news conference the recent sweep known as Project Steel led to the identification of dozens of victims and 37 children being safeguarded from harm. A total of 1,132 electronic devices were seized, and charges laid so far include possession, distribution, and accessing child pornography. There was a child in Kingston, Ontario, 16 years old, name protected right now anyway, who was arrested in this sweep. A 16-year-old kid was involved in this. Gerard said these numbers are preliminary and there are hundreds of ongoing investigations. He said child protection requires a joint approach involving law enforcement, government, non-governmental organizations, and technology companies working together. Oh, right. So that means censorship. Public awareness always plays a vital role in protecting children, blah, blah, blah. Project Steel brought together 63 law enforcement partners from across the country, led by the OPP, the QPP, and the RCMP's National Child Exploitation Crime Center. Gerard said, the officer in charge of operations at the RCMP Center praised officers for doing the very difficult work of investigating exploitation. Every day, police personnel across Canada are working hard to help children. Detective Andrew Ulock of the Peel Regional Police Internet Child Exploitation Unit brought along Harley, a 4-year-old Labrador Retriever trained to sniff out cell phones, computers, thumb drives, and small digital cards. Anything that can store data she can detect by scent, Ulock said. Once police have finished searching premises for digital devices that might contain images of child exploitation, it's Harley's turn to look. It's important we don't miss devices, because missed devices means missed evidence, and missed evidence can also mean a missed victim that we would have had a chance to otherwise identify and save. In the last 2 years, Harley has found devices that investigators missed in about 60% of searches conducted under a warrant, he said. Harley also provides needed emotional support. Those of us who work in this field of internet child exploitation, we're all vulnerable to vicarious trauma. So having a dog, a companion, a co-worker like Harley who's in our office every day, she has full run of the office. She lightens the load for us. She improves the mood. Project Steel is ongoing. Wow, that's crazy. We're going to delve into child exploitation tonight and depopulation on the extension on shadowdavis.com in just a couple of minutes. I want to thank Bret Sears for joining the show tonight. The work, Bret, that you are doing, if you're still watching right now, is absolutely invaluable, hopefully. And, like you said earlier, it's going to be tough with these redactions because we don't know what they've redacted. They claim that it's about personal privacy, but who knows? It could be about something else that they don't want leaking to the public. But hopefully they miss some things that you and your people find. Find Bret on X. All right? It's Bret with one T. So at Bret, B-R-E-T, _Sears on X. You can message him there if you have the time and the inclination to go ahead and try and break down 1,000 pages of Theresa Tam's emails. And who knows what you're going to find in there. I mean, you may not find anything about the injections, the mRNA injections, but you might find something else. Something that Donald Best found last week was the story about the Inuit children being subjected to vaccination experiments without parental consent or knowledge. An experimental RSV vaccine. Apparently this has been going on for a while. Healthcare workers up in the north were concerned because there was no permission given, there was no consent, there was no knowledge of any of this, and they brought it to the attention of the authorities and were never, ever answered. Could there be criminal charges filed on this? There should be. I don't see why there wouldn't be. So there could be more information like that in these emails. Again, find Bret on X at Bret, one T, _Sears. All right, that's it for the social media part of the show tonight, you guys. I'll catch you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadow at Night live stream. For you all accessors, I'll catch you on shadowdavis.com and in the Telegram group, which is Shadow at Night Community, in 2 minutes' time. I'll be right back. Love you all. Appreciate you all. Bye for now.